Good evening. It's my honor and privilege to welcome you to yet another edition of the BW Dialogue. Today we have a special guest who's based in Mumbai, the city that's battling with COVID in a big way. He's in a sector that is in some way seen an uptake post-COVID. Let me welcome Mr. Anup Rau, who's the Managing Director and CEO of Future Generali Insurance in India. Welcome, Mr. Rau, to this BW Dialogue. Along with Mr. Rau is my colleague, Soumya Sehgal from BW Businessworld and BW Marketing World. She'll join me in this conversation with Mr. Anup Rau. Anup, good evening. How has been the last 6 months for you, both personally and professionally? What has kept you busy?
Hi, Annurag, and thanks for having me over. And hi, Soumya. Nice to be here. Well, what's kept me busy? Well, I think what's kept me the busiest, frankly, is helping people recognize that this pandemic is here to stay for a while. I think one of the things a lot of us as leaders struggled with in March was to tell people that this pandemic is not going to go away, and it's at least 3 to 6 to 9 months before normalcy returns. And today it seems like an optimistic forecast. You're talking about no solution in sight in the medium or the near term right now. But personally, for me, the biggest challenge was to convince people working for me that, guys, let's not just say that we'll cut our losses for the next couple of months and then move on with life, because this is going to be here to stay for a while. And I think that took a lot of our time in the first few weeks, in the initial weeks after the lockdown was announced by the government.
Okay. And because you've been proved right partly that it will be long term, what is your suggestion now? How long? Of course, there are lots of variables, but what does your expert view or experts who are guiding you tell you? When will it go away? When will the vaccine come about?
So I'll just approach this a little differently, Annurag. I think we need to look at, what we call are the long-tailed risks, which take place. So let me again get back.
By the way, I did read Chris Anderson's book long time, maybe 20 years back or 15. And yes, I do understand the concept of long tail. So go on.
So what happened is that in the month of February, we took a call that we will invoke BCP. So we at Future Generali, we shut our offices on the 12th of March, which was a good 2 weeks before the government imposed the lockdown. So when that happened, we were already prepared because we already moved to work from home. And then we told people this is going to be the reality for the next 6 to 7 to 8 months. A lot of people didn't believe us that time. And eventually, unfortunately, we end up being proven right. But if you ask me, I think two things as leaders we need to do. One is, we need to be able to confront reality, however unpleasant it might be. And sometimes it's about, we all want good news. You all want light at the end of the tunnel. We all want to turn the corner. But sometimes recognizing that, we are in for a wrong haul, things aren't pretty, and helping people around you all to internalize that recognition or what, is important. The other really, Anurag, according to me, is that people talk about being technologically equipped, by being tech savvy, so on and so forth. I think what's most important is adaptability and flexibility. Now, if you look at a lot of traditional organizations, a lot of brick and mortar ones, and you'd be aware of a lot of them, Anurag, they have adapted far better than companies which are technologically more advanced. Again, if you go out of India, look at a company like Skype. This should have been the big moment, right? What happened? And you look at Zoom and Microsoft Teams have done extremely well. Sorry?
A new player came, kind of ate their lunch, so to say.
Absolutely. And even if you look at banking, a very traditional bank, which has done far better than some other banks which have, better technology, because they have leveraged their technology better. Sometimes, these competencies or these attributes you have as a management team or as an organization are more important than just, a couple of these capabilities, technological capabilities, so to speak, or other capabilities which you can buy off the shelf out of the market.
You gave me a perfect example. I saved it to bring in later, but you started with HDFC, right? And you were the head of distribution. And look at how the HDFC done. Look at its relatively stock price. You have to look at it relatively, right now. Then you pretty much have spent all your career in insurance. Tell us, how's the insurance sector done in the last 6 months? We know that the health insurance need has gone up. People are checking a lot more about health insurance. They've become much more interested in better health, immunity, seeking health insurance just in case something happens to them or their family. Give a sense of what's happening to the insurance industry and the health insurance industry.
The short answer, Anurag, is that the industry has shrunk. So unfortunately,
in the short term. In the short term.
In the short term, In the short term. So since COVID, the industry has shrunk, both life and general. Some companies like ours have grown, but we are more of an exception than the rule. My view is that in the long term, there will be greater appreciation for insurance as a category. So people would want to avoid risk by paying a small premium. And I think there will be recognition about what this industry does for people in terms of managing risks. So I do believe post-COVID, I think what customers need to be careful about is to not take a very narrow view. So a lot of people are looking at COVID as a situation, and we've seen that in the past in Delhi. You realize that there's a season when there's dengue. Every year there's a particular point in time when people want protection from dengue or from malaria, or you have monsoons and chikungunya, so on and so forth. I think it's important that people look at health from a holistic point of view and look at comprehensive cover. I think the worst thing people can do right now is to look at a very narrow view or take a very narrow view saying that I want protection from COVID. And I think while there's appreciation for health as a category, I don't think it's deep enough for people to actually look at it as holistically as they should. I think there's still work that needs to be done there.
Fantastic. And, let's say it is another, I was talking to a very senior private equity player, very good friend of mine. I was speaking to him in March. It is Anurag, August se pehle nahi jayega. So he was clearly proven. He said, August se pehle nahi jayega. So yesterday I asked him, I was about to give away his name. And he said to me, Anurag, it's an 18 month. You should look at another 18 months and you have to thrive within this. So clearly you're right. This is a long haul. You said it in March. It is a long haul. My sense is it will be another 6 months. Even if the vaccine is finalized now, it will be trials. There will be commercialization, there is distribution, there is pricing, affordability. So I think there will be another 12 to 18 months. Having said that, we're always open to miracles. So if it happens earlier than that, we'd be happy to be proven wrong. Tell us, over the next 12, 18 months, if you have to predict the trends in healthcare insurance, what do you think will happen? What will happen in the insurance sector? I know you shared that in the short term, it has shrunk. So what will happen in the short term and what will happen in the medium and long term?
See, I have a couple of theories here before I talk about insurance. One is that, that while our infection rate is pretty high, we also have among the lowest mortality rates in the world. That's because of our young population largely. So I think what the government has done is right, saying that let the economy start chugging along and let's deal with the situation. All said and done, the death rate has not been alarming. Every death is a tragedy. There's no question about it. Not even a single death is acceptable. But if there are some hard choices and hard decisions to be made, they are not easy ones. And then I think in some sense we could be heading towards herd immunity of some shape or form. How that's going to play out in the medium long term, we don't know. But if you look at certain slums in Bombay, from what I have read, you will find that places like Dharavi already reached herd immunity, where there were about 100 cases a day. Now the number of cases are down to about one a day. So 57% penetration of COVID, and most of them being asymptomatic or not being severely affected, we seem to have gotten that under control. I do think that besides health, a lot of other categories will open up. A lot of SMEs, a lot of mom and shop shops, a lot of shopkeepers, people who run restaurants, barber shops, so on and so forth. Business interruption insurance. I think all these categories will also pick up because the appetite for people to face these risks will go down. So I do expect appreciation in a lot of these categories also to go up. It's not just about health. Health, obviously, there is some amount of, if I can use the word, I think there's some amount of panic buying. People are assessing whether they're sufficiently covered. What does that policy cover? Does it cover all they thought it covers? Does it cover other members of the family? Does it cover mummy, papa or 78 years old? So on and so forth. So I think people are doing an internal audit and there's some level of panic. But I think also other categories, I think, for example, other products which are not there in the market, loss of job, for instance. I think these again have opportunities wherein a lot of insurers can add societal value by coming out with products such as these. So I think the category will expand beyond the obvious. Cyber insurance, for example, the fact that, there's a lot of vulnerability and there's a lot of attacks and there's a lot of data theft and identity theft, especially under these current circumstances when we are all online and having this conversation. So I think beyond health, there will be massive expansion.
You're saying what, in this new pandemic, innovation is the mantra. You have to look at the needs of the population and come up with new products that kind of are needed. You talked about two, insurance against job loss, insurance against cyber theft or cyber crime. So I think those were absolutely needed products in real. I want to ask you an unrelated question to insurance. See, you did your early schooling in Bangalore, and then you came to, if my preparation serves me right, you studied the Frank Anthony School in Bangalore. Then you came to Delhi, you studied at the Sardar Patel Vidyalaya. Then you studied in the Delhi University. Then you studied in Mumbai University, right? And now you work in Mumbai. So it's Bangalore, Delhi, Mumbai. Tell us which city is the best and why? Which is your number one city?
Oh God, that's a tough one. I think I love Delhi for the food because I am a foodie.
Not for the people. Not for the people.
Also, well, it's people who make the food at the end of the day. So no, but I think Delhi is a fantastic. I mean, I have very close friends in Delhi. I think in Delhi, if you access people emotionally, they stand by you for life. And I think they have a big appetite not just for good food but for life as a whole. But Bombay is a city which celebrates individuality. I mean, so it lets you be. So for somebody who moved into the city in the 90s, I found a huge difference in terms of the kind of personal space it had. So a lot of people who are marginalized, who belong to the margins of the society or who follow socially unacceptable, what is in a socially unacceptable ethos in their smaller towns, I think Bombay gives everyone a refuge, and we've got to respect that. That's why, it's a place where the young and the restless move to, right? I mean, it lets you pursue whatever dreams and ambitions you have. What your surname is does not matter. What your father is does not matter. Delhi, in that sense, I think some of these things, while it's changing, still matter. But Delhi is a great place. I mean, it's my favorite place for food. And it's one place I miss traveling to after the pandemic, especially. So,
what's your favorite restaurant or a place that you eat in Delhi? I live in Delhi, so I have a good idea of almost all the places.
So I like going to
a place which, when I got married 19 and a half years back, my wife told me there is something called Mughal Mahal. I haven't seen it. Yeah, and it's a favorite place of it's somewhere near Samya's home in Rajendra Place. So Delhi has so many hidden gems apart from the big name. So what is your favorite restaurants?
So I do like Kareem's.
Of course.
And I do like the Palak Saag at Minar. And I do like the Pani Puri or the Golgappe at Padam Chaat. And I do like the Dahi Vallas at Natraj. So I can go fish fat. And I do like Ban Samosa at Chanakya Puri.
Right.
So I am. I mean, so I've
your Sardar Patel Vidyalaya, Delhi University, clearly these are places that are, the heart of Delhi. They are part of Delhi. And yes, cuisine is right. Also, I mean, Mumbai is a fantastic city. I spent about 15 days every month in Mumbai before the pandemic, not now. And yes, you're right. Mumbai accepts you as you are and then kind of takes you in. But I love Mumbai, but, I love Delhi more. I have to say that, the way Delhi is structured, I think Delhi is Delhi. I love Mumbai, but Delhi is Delhi. I love Bangalore except for the traffic jams. So coming back to, now let me move to the insurance sector again. You were the CEO of Reliance Nippon Life Insurance. Then you moved on to the insurer with Edelweiss, and then now you're here. Tell us, what was the one thing that you achieved in your past 3 jobs? Before this, you've done 3 jobs: HDFC, Reliance Nippon, and Edelweiss. So tell us some interesting anecdotes from all the 3 roles that you played.
No, I think Reliance. I mean, I'm grateful to that institution that they took a punt on me when I was 38. They gave me the top job then. So I think a lot of exposure and learnings there. I served there for 4 years, and I must give credit that at that point in time, an organization which didn't have a bank, managed to scale up to a particular level and run a particular quality of franchise, which was not easy. And I think they had this great appetite to take punts and risks on people, not just people, but on a lot of things. And they had the ability to back that with money. So I'm very grateful for that opportunity. Edelweiss, of course, I mean, great leadership, quality of management, great culture. I mean, personally, I have a lot of respect for the promoter and the senior management team there. If you ask me about the quality of people I've worked with in my life, while Edelweiss, might be seen as a smaller company in terms of quality of people, I think the best people I've worked with have been at Edelweiss. So I think these companies obviously, have had an impact and shaped my thinking. HDFC, of course, a very solid conservative franchise, tells you the value of doing things for the long term. ICICI is where I started my early career. Hyper growth, ambition, customer orientation, the investments in people. You still get most of the CEOs from ICICI.
Lots of them. Entrepreneurs also look at Mr. V. Vaidyanathan of the First Capital Bank.
Yes.
So clearly, all these institutions that you work have produced leaders, both as entrepreneurs and as CEOs. My last question before I bring in Soumya. Tell us, there were leadership rules before COVID, and there are leadership rules after COVID. What has changed? What has got added on?
So I think the fundamentals of leadership remain the same. But I'll tell you, there's one very, when Nassim Taleb says in his book that people who explain better are rewarded more than people who work better. And I think what COVID has done is that it's prioritized content over form. And let me explain that. I think, the world has celebrated extroverts for too long. I mean, and, how you presented, what you said, how you articulated a particular point of view carried a lot more weight than possibly the content or the validity of that view or the quality of that view. I think what COVID has done is that forced people to look at data more closely. So I think in terms of assessment, things have become fairer. And if I look at one fundamental change, this is what it is. The other is obviously the return of the introvert, because I think all this while we did celebrate a certain kind of behavior. You would appreciate that, today a 2-hour meeting over Zoom or over Skype or over Microsoft Teams is a lot more fatiguing and exhausting than one in person. It takes a lot more out of you. And you do today value people who can make a point quickly, sharply, and then move on. So, but I just think that, leaders will look at data a lot more closely and a lot more fairly. I think it's just even the scales a little, than they did in the past. I think that's one fundamental permanent shift.
Thank you so much. Soumya, your questions. Go ahead.
Yes. Anup sir, you just spoke about confronting realities in one of your answers. What, according to you, are some of the irreversible changes, whether in terms of consumer behavior or business realities, that you feel have formed the new normal because of the pandemic?
I think. I think demands for goods and services will remain the same. Only the way we consume it has changed. I mean, you still consume entertainment, but you consume that through Netflix or Amazon Prime. You don't go to the theater anymore. Same thing with the way we consume sports. I think some of these will get accelerated. The other thing is that because of greater individuality, because the ways these things are pursued, I think you'll have a lot more micro markets. I think there'll be hyper segmentation. While the unfortunate reality and the fear a lot of us have is that in the online space, you have winner takes all. I mean, you just have one Google, you just have one Facebook, you just have one web aggregator. You have maybe, 2 taxi aggregators. You have an Uber and an Ola, or maybe 1 or 2 in China, 1 or 2 in Malaysia, so on and so forth. But the fact is the customers are going to get hyper fragmented in terms of their requirements, and big data is going to help you do that. So you'll see 2 very contrasting views. One is consolidation as far as providers of goods and services and corporations are concerned. Winner takes all, and that's a risk, and that's not something which I'm very happy about. But also hyper personalization on the other hand for customers.
Right, sir. So talking about the shift in the consumption pattern of the consumers, they are more digitally active now. So you too have, made some digital investments in the past 3-4 months. Was distribution to sell digitally a challenge for you, and what kind of investments did you make on that front?
So I think when you talk about technology, it has to be cheap, it has to be scalable, it has to be replicable. It doesn't, and it has to be very functional. Now, Look, it's any banker will tell you this, that that it's not that the customers can't do online and bank, but the fact is that you have to get him to do those 5 transactions first, and then he's going to stop coming to the branch, and that's what most banks struggle with, right? To make sure he does those 2 transactions and then he stops coming to the branch. I think similarly, I think our attempt really was to change behavior. And frankly, our bigger challenges were like I mentioned, was to convince people that this pandemic is here to stay. And then it took a long time for people to internalize it. The second was to tell people that it's possible to sell digitally. It's not about the quality of the digital assets you have, because I think in terms of functionality, there's very little difference between all.
True.
You can have more bells and whistles, but it can make do with one vis-a-vis the other. There's really no fundamental difference in reaching out to a customer. But the old-fashioned virtues of perseverance, reaching out to a customer, making sure his doubts are cleared, making sure you know when to move on, making sure how to get references, making sure how to prospect digitally. I think those are the more important skills. And that's what we really worked on, rather than technology per se, because technology by itself can only get you so far.
True. So I was just going through one of your articles and it said that a few of your key areas would include collaboration with fintech for the ease of buying. So if you could just throw light on that.
So I think one of the things we want to do is that we want to learn from a lot of them, because I think they belong to a different demographic compared to most of our employees and the kind of customers we service. You have a sharing economy, you have a rental economy, you have a vast demographic. Most of our population is under 35, but most people who run our companies are much older than that. And secondly, the fact is that, that I think they get what it takes to get some of those younger customers on board. For us, it's not more about partnership in terms of getting volume. It's about more being able to learn and understand, and hopefully add value to them and helping them understand what it takes to run a business in the long term. So for us, it's more about learning more than anything else.
Right. So my next question would be from the employee-centric approach that you've exercised during this time. You have come up with employee assistance programs and yoga and meditation sessions. So how has this whole employee-centric approach, how did it come in the picture, and how did you all execute it? How did it work for you?
So, let me start at the basic. My fundamental view is that a lot of companies say that you have a lot of values, right? One of the values you say is that you're customer-centric, you'll be fair, you'll be transparent, you'll be accountable. I don't think you can be any of all that without being employee-centric. You can't say that these are my values and then you treat your employees in a particular way, because if you do that, you'll have very opportunistic relationships with your employees. In good times, they'll stay with you, in bad times, they'll also abandon you. So I think one of our attempts has been to be consistent in terms of our behavior. We had a blockbuster year last year. This year we're going through some struggles, but the way we've treated our employees in both situations has been pretty standard. We did realize that this was unprecedented. So we set up a helpline and we told our employees to call up and ask for help. And it was free. So they could speak to a counselor. They could ask for any training or mentoring they required. They could, we had conducted yoga classes and therapy classes. So these have been well received, and we've made it very clear to our vendors that the loyalty is to the employee who's reaching out to them. It's not to the company. So whatever our employees do, whoever they reach out to, whatever conversations they have, they're completely confidential. And they don't discuss anything with us. But, some of us at senior management also reached out for guidance and counseling. And part of that was also to check, how the quality of advice is. And we found it very good. And we are very happy with the kind of service providers that we are using. And just to reiterate, the loyalty is to the individual, not to the organization.
True. So I was also going through some of your CSR activities that you've done in this period, SNE being your CSR unit. Did you roll out any special initiatives on the health, education or environment front?
No, so I think we have contributed to the PM Cares funds, but all this while we've been building capability around doing things for education and for children. So we continued on that. So we didn't want to get into something where we don't have much experience. We thought it's better we just give it to the Prime Minister's funds and take it from there, and let the experts take care of it.
Right. So my last question to you is: we know the pandemic is here to stay. As a company, how future ready are you now?
Well, future ready means being flexible, being lit, being consistent in your philosophy and your attitude. I think as long as, and it's not just about hard, cold technology. Of course, that's important. You need to have that. Richie Bernard said that, captaincy is 90% luck and 10% skill. For God's sake, have that 10%. So this 10% is the technology, the 90% is your classical management capability, which is required. So I don't think being future ready means that we have to build some cold, radical capabilities compared to what we had in the past.
True. I think that's quite insightful. Over to you, Anurag sir.
Thank you, Soumya, for asking such good quality and relevant questions, and thank you for your research. I'm glad this is our first interview we're doing together, and I'm grateful for the quality of content you brought to it. Anup, just to ask you a question from where Soumya left off. See, a lot of brands in the last 5.5, 6 months have gone to a pause. Within some categories, rightly, there was no demand, or the demand was brought down to zero because of the pandemic, right? What has Future Generali done in terms of enhancing its relationship with its customers?
So we have done a lot of digital campaigns. So we haven't done. So we have looked at marketing for three bunches of people. One is our employees, second is our distributors, third is our customers, and for us, all three are important. So, I mean, for me, my employee is as important as my customer. My distributor is as important as my customer. I mean, and I stick to that. I mean, you can't prioritize one over the other because you're a part of the same enabling ecosystem, right? So, when it came to our distributors, I mean, we did a lot of things. For example, we made sure that they were insured. I mean, we made sure that if somebody contracts COVID, that we were there to protect them. We made sure that we gave them enabling tools. We made sure that, we gave them the benefit of doubt in a lot of cases wherein we could not underwrite as we would in the past. We told the agent that fine, you decide if you think there's a good case to write, you go ahead and do it. As far as the customers are concerned, we did a lot on Facebook. We did a lot using WhatsApp as a medium. It's not, I mean, I don't think it's the right forum for me to publicize my brand, but we did a lot of good stuff on promoting health insurance to our customers. And maybe that's something I'll share with you after the interview. And as far as the employees are concerned, we did a few things that we spoke about. I think we did a lot of communication. That's also a form of internal marketing. I mean, the number of town halls, the number of interactions, for example, internally have significantly gone up. And we have also asked them for feedback on what is it that they would like to make sure that they have a better quality of life. So, for example, game nights, comedy shows, so on and so forth, virtually, where the employee and the families can participate on a regular basis, are things that we have done.
Now, if you had to predict the future, tell us 3 trends that you see happening post-COVID, which may not be visible right now, which may be kind of, under the carpet, but that in the near medium term, they will start to become bigger and bigger, and in some way change the way we work, change the way we live, change the way we do business. So give us a sense of your predictions for future.
So I think one prediction I did say that there'll be greater fragmentation in the market because there'll be greater individuality in the way people approach their requirement for products and services. I think 2 other trends which I can see is, and this is borrowed from China really, but then post-COVID we saw an increase in ownership of personal vehicles.
Personal mobility.
Personal mobility.
As soon as the lockdown opened in Wuhan and other parts of China, the sales of both 2-wheelers and 4-wheelers went up significantly.
Absolutely. So I do expect entry-level cars and 2-wheeler sales to go up in the country.
Hence the insurance for them will go up.
But I don't expect those vehicles to be driven as much as they are right now, because I think people will continue to work from home, which will mean the configuration of residences in India will undergo change. Because I think if you're going to, instead of spending 10 hours a day at home, you're going to spend about 22 hours at home on a working day, then I think the quality of the quality of fittings and whatever else you have in the house would also go up, and maybe the kind of personal space required would go up. So this is what I hear from a couple of very big developers. They actually expect the residential market also to show an uptick soon.
Anup, I started my career in real estate. I was part of the startup team of Colliers. Then with Anuj Puri, he set up and I used to work there. We were 10 people in the company, so I used to work with Anuj. And we also have a real estate magazine. I want to tell you, I genuinely believe, you talked of sharing economy. I think the sharing economy has taken a big toll. I think it's the caring economy that is taking over. I say there is 3 C's: collaborative, compassionate, and contactless. Or you can say compassionate and caring. My view is the millennials have spent so much time in the home for the first time that they will understand the value of having their own home, right? And they're smart, so they understand that they'd rather invest in a property, buy a property, and pay the EMI than live in a rented one. So you're absolutely right. The developers are not wrong in their assessment. I think at some stage, and people have saved money, Anup. Beyond essentials, we haven't got out, eaten out, we haven't traveled. So people have saved money. That will, Indians like to buy a house, buy real estate. I think you're absolutely right about both the trends. Increase in personal mobility and buying of residential houses, flats, accommodation, whatever. Go on.
So these were my big three. So entry-level cars, two-wheelers, houses, and third is, the greater fragmentation in customer segments.
Anup, what is the biggest failure you had in your life and what did you learn from it?
Oh, I have had more than one. I've had plenty of them. So
tell us about what have you learned from your failures?
Well, I think one thing I've realized is that it's I think we give ourselves a lot of credit. We give too much credit for our success to ourselves and too much blame to ourselves for our failures. I think our successes are a failure in a larger context. It's because of the environment, it's because of the ecosystem, it's because of the people around you, it's because of your mentors, your bosses. A lot of factors come into play. And I don't think we recognize that in the daily grind. And I think somebody who's successful should be able to leverage the entire ecosystem and every single element in it. So one of the things I learned in life was that a lot of my successes, I have to be grateful to a lot of other people who made it possible. And a lot of my failures, again, were also contextual. They were in context to the larger environment there. So I think that's made me wiser in terms of being able to leverage my environment. I think that's one fundamental thing that I've learned. I think the second thing really is that your success or failure is the way you look at it is a matter of part of your emotional balance, really. I mean, I think skills and competencies are something that all of us have or you can acquire. But your emotional balance is what really sees you through those bad times. And I promise you that, all of us will have plenty of them. And unfortunately, the way we are wired, our ability to feel sadness is, magnified degree of sadness is far more than our ability to feel a magnified level of joy. You can feel a lot sadder than you can feel happy. And how you moderate that emotion, I think, is going to decide how you're going to take the next step from there.
You're so right. I want to share an article that came in the New York Times about grief. That we have a lot of unexpressed grief, and how we express it, how we learn from that grief and use grief for our growth will really determine in what path we're headed. You rightly said, success in life is about, I believe it's what you throw out in the universe. I believe in the power of serendipity. I believe in the power of good intent. And really success, I keep saying, success has many fathers, failure has none. So really success is about a lot of people contributing to your success. You're right. And it is, if human beings start thinking that they do things, we are mere instruments, and I really believe in that. We got to take an action because we don't know what God is in store for us or the universe is in store for us. So we got to do our best and leave the rest to God. But it happens through divine intervention, and a lot of people contribute to it. You're right. Also, I keep saying, there's nothing called failure. I keep saying what Randy Posh said in his book, The Last Lecture. Experience is what you get when you don't get what you want. And I say failure is an experience. So that's what I believe in. I have never got bogged down. Even if I do, it is temporarily. And I use a very big, tool to come out of that. I oversleep. If I'm sad, I'm worried about something, I just oversleep. And it just reinvigorates me. And, it's a new brand day that I leverage on. So I really believe what you're saying. My last question. Talk about skills. Tell us, post-pandemic, what are the skills that will be even more relevant? And you already alluded to one skill, is how do you deal with your moods? How do you deal with your own feelings? You talk about sadness, but it is, as they say, the only person you can discipline or control is yourself. You cannot control others. So, of course, that is skill of being able to deal with your own moods, with your own feelings, being centered about them, and being equanimous about them, not getting too excited by success, not getting too dejected by a temporary experience that we call failure is what determines your growth in the long term. But tell us in terms of skill terms, what is the skills that will help a professional become a better leader, become a CEO, perform better in a job? What are those skills?
So, I think, look, I mean, at the end of the day, if somebody wants to become a CEO, you have to understand it's a generalist function. It is not a specialist function. And I think there was one of my colleagues who explained this to me beautifully. He says that a good CEO is somebody who's got what he calls a T-shaped competency. He's very good at one thing and pretty good at and understands everything else. So when you have that T-shaped competency is when you become a CEO. But I must tell you, a CEO's job is far away from, you spend the least time running the company. You have to deal with external stakeholders, you have to deal with the regulator, you have to deal with the board, you have to deal with analysts, you have to deal with the media, you have to deal with the shareholders, so on and so forth. So I think that's an important skill and or attribute you need to, and you can't take a view that that I'll just continue to be an operating individual and avoid all this. It can't. I mean, it just comes with the territory. Specific to the pandemic, I think again I'll move away from skill, but Anurag, one of the things I've realized over the last 6 months is that post-pandemic we really haven't switched off here. I mean, this entire space between professional and personal life is completely blurred. I mean, you just don't get off work. You are at work 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. You call up people at 9:30, 10 in the night because your excuse is wo ghar pe baitha hua hai. You call somebody on Saturday, Sunday because wo ghar pe baitha hua hai. There's no respect for time. So we have tried to put some rules around it in our company saying that you compulsorily have to break every hour. You can't have meetings beyond a certain time, so on and so forth. But I think one of the things I worry about is that we really haven't matured to understand what it takes to switch off in this situation. And I'll be honest, I don't think I've got a sense of it myself. I mean, I don't know when to switch off. I mean, because I find it very easy to call somebody at 7:30 in the morning or at 9:30, 10 in the night. Extremely easy.
It's become boundaryless. The work has become timeless, boundaryless. We all are working more. And, I have a dream for my company, so I'm actually grateful to God that I've been able to focus so much. I mean, Soumya knows I have a skill that very few people have. I respond to emails real time. So that's a skill. I think I send emails all day. You would have seen that today itself.
Yeah.
And somebody asked me, what did you get your PhD? I said in emailing, which is very believable for people.
I can second that for sure.
Yeah. And a lot of people ask me, how do you do that? I said, I have a bot called Batra. Batra and bot, Batra. But I'll tell you, I sleep enough. I think at about 9:30, 10, I switch off most days. But yes, I have a dream, so I'm utilizing this time to build my company to a new level, to build the digital business, to build a video-first culture. And I had a lot of catching up to do. So I'm doing that. I have a responsibility and I see an opportunity. Between these two, it's making me work. But I'm very conscious. I've never called Soumya on a Sunday. And I literally work 8 days a week. That's the title of my book that is coming out. I work 8 days a week. Sometimes my kids and wife also complain that, Papa, our work hasn't been done. You've been working. But, they're very supportive. So I understand I think each person has their own unique way of getting the best out of himself in the environment. And we must respect that. But I definitely believe that every person has to have good quality of sleep and a family time. If they don't have that, then it is very difficult to be able to be emotionally centered. Because if you're not slept well, you will not be emotionally centered. If you're not with your family or loved ones, whatever constitutes, if you're a single person, whoever is your loved one. And I believe people who are centered and are loved become better leaders. They take better decisions. They're contented. I genuinely, so I do not encourage people to sleep less. In fact, I tell people who work very closely with me to sleep more. Because if you just did that one thing, you'll be better in your health, in your thinking, in how you interact with people. And I can tell you, Anup, the days I don't sleep well or sleep enough, that is not the best day to interact with me because I'm snappy. And I'm not able to process information like I'm being able to do today because I've slept very well. So it happens. So I'm fully with you. I want to let go by asking you my last question, and Soumya, you can ask the one question. There are 3 questions on two on Q&A and 1 on the Zoom. I'll take one of them. My last question to you is, Anup, if we talk to you in 1 year, I'm not saying 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, I'm taking a month. what would have Anup Rau achieved for himself and achieved for the organization that you so proudly represent?
So, okay, for myself, I would, I think I would like to be more and more effective at in my personal space, and what I mean by that is that there's a book by Scott Adams which talks about how to fail at almost everything and still win big. And one of the things he talks about is that you work lesser and lesser.
Less is more.
Less is more. And I think there's one thing he talks about. He says there are two kinds of people. People are optimizers and people are maximizers. Maximizers are the people who try and get as much done in a day as possible. Optimizers are the people who identify what is relevant and get that done and don't do the rest. But optimizers end up achieving more out of life than maximizers do. So in a simple sense, a maximizer is somebody who says that I'm office ja raha hu, so raste mein, main sabji kharid lunga, main kapde kharid lunga, I'll fill fuel in my car. Whereas, an optimizer will say, I'll just go to office and come back and then I'll ask my driver to do this over the weekend. For instance, just as an example, frivolous example, but just to make that point. I think personally for me, I want to become more of an optimizer than a maximizer because by nature, I'd end up being a maximizer. I've tried, I think I moved some distance, but I still have this temptation to squeeze in as much as possible. So that is something that I want to, I want to be more of, which is an optimizer. As far as the organization is concerned, we are a great place to work certified. Nothing would be more joy than to be an employer of choice. And I think I say it unabashedly. I think the most important people for me are my employees. And we would want to be a benchmark employer. So we can say a lot of things, but then I think if you're a benchmark employer, I think everything else falls into shape. You'll have a great brand, you'll be great at customer service, you'll be great at everything. But I think the starting point is being a great employer.
Fantastic. I'll have to figure out I'm a maximizer or an optimizer or I'm a maximizer. But I say the same thing. You can't mistake activity for progress. A lot of people do activity. Is activity equal to progress? I think over a period of time, if you do the activity well, it leads to progress. I fully believe in it. Though I said last, but I'll ask you, you look like you read a lot of books. What's your favorite book? What is that one book that you read in the lockdown that you would recommend?
So I think my favorite author is Nassim Taleb. I loved Skin in the Game, Fooled by Randomness, Black Swan, so on and so forth. I'm currently reading Atomic Habits by James Clear.
By the way, I've read every book. I have that book also at me. The cover of it attracted me. I'm the kind, before the pandemic till March, I would buy 50 books a week and somehow keep them near my head so that they will get into my head. But I do end up reading 10%. But in the pandemic, I've been so busy that I've read only one book and I've watched 3 movies. I love books and movies, but I've read all those books, and Atomic Habits is very good. I'd recommend a book called Choice by Epstein. It's a lovely book. Again, the light turquoise cover got me attracted, but once you start reading, you can't put down that book.
Choice. Okay, I'll pick it up. I'll take your advice.
I'll send you a link. Thank you so much, Anup, for talking to us. We've thoroughly enjoyed talking to you. And I look forward to having a coffee in a physical way someday when you're in Delhi.
I don't know if you remember.
I'm in Bombay. Maybe go to one of your favorite joints if you're in Delhi. My favorite joint in Bombay is Som. Babulal Mandir. Though I'm a Punjabi, I love vegetarian food. And my most favorite restaurant is a restaurant in Ahmedabad called Agashe. I love veg food. So, though I'm non-vegetarian, I ate it last night. I can live without non-vegetarian forever. So,
I thought you remember, Annurag, the last time we met physically in person was at ITC doing the Exchange for Media Awards.
Yes, I did meet you, yeah. But जैसे वो अमिताभ बच्चन कहते हैं, ये मिलना भी कोई मिलना है. तो मिलना का मतलब है आप मुझे खाना वाना खिलाइए, कुछ पैसे खर्च करिए, इकोनॉमी का इजाफा करिए कुछ. So that's
real. I'll come to your city and make sure I'm well fed by you.
Your city, you studied there. It's a city that again.
I think I just have one more tip, and which has worked for me because, have a dog.
I have to tell you, I have a daughter who's 16 plus. She just turned 16 exactly a week back. She shares a birthday with her father, and so she's brilliant and she takes a lot of things from her mother. So I hope she goes on more on her mother. She picks up the best things from both of us. And me and my wife are very apart. She has long hair, she's good looking, she's wise, so she has everything that I don't have. And I may say it jokingly, but she's actually very good. And my son is 12. So from the time the lockdown started, Anup, they wanted a dog and I've resisted it. And to be honest, the dog I have not even picked up once. So finally, their mamu got them a dog a month back. And that's become a fifth member of the family. Her name is Sydney. And wherever we go, we've gone to people's home in the last 4 weeks for the first time. And my kids have refused to come out, but people have loved my kids and my wife. But more than that, they've loved Sydney. So you're absolutely right. Dog that brings a certain emotion, and the kind of love you get back from the dog is possibly unparalleled. So I've seen it in the last 5 weeks myself. My brother-in-law gifted one to my daughter on her birthday, much in advance, and really, I fully agree with what you are saying. Yatanshu, you want to know the 3 C's? The 3C economy is the collaborative economy. You have to collaborate internally and externally. Second C is compassion or caring, and third is contactless. So you have to thrive in the 3C economy. My second book will be called the 3C economy. So really, I am whatever little I do because of our love with books, and again, luck, serendipity, all that you talked about. The good karma of my parents, the good luck of my wife that rubs up on me. That's what she tells me, and I believe her. So thank you so much, Anup. There's one question for you, which is a technical question. Deepak is asking you, what was the one thing you would like to say to young, new insurance sales managers?
Well, I'll just tell you something. I started my career in sales. I did sales because I was not good at anything else. But sales is somewhere where you can control your destiny, you can control your life. And as long as you are failing every day, you're learning every day. And that's what I discovered, because I started as a frontline sales guy. I went and sold insurance policies door to door. But then you learn new tricks, you learn new skills every single day. So I think if there's one profession where you can take control of your destiny, it is sales. So
I totally agree with Anup. And because if you have to do sales, every other element needs to be aligned. Sales will only happen if all the elements are aligned.
Yeah.
I totally agree with Anup. May say it, make it simplistic, but it's about aligning everything else you do. And then the outcome is the sales. Right.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. Soumya, your last question before we let Anup.
Yes, sir, I have a very curious question to ask you. It is the recent startups in the insurance industry
Next time we'll do a dialogue with your canine partner.
My dog has found something.
What's your dog's name?
Rana. He's a Rajapalyam. He's an Indian hound. He's a Tamilian hound.
Reminds me of our yesterday's conversation, sir. If you know what I mean. Anyway, Anup sir, I would like to know do you think the recent startups in the insurance industry were better equipped to deal with the whole lockdown and the pandemic?
No, I think cold technology doesn't give you any leadership. There are management practices, skills, and competencies which give you leadership. I'll give you countless examples during the pandemic wherein companies who have been technologically challenged have done far better than companies which are at the cutting edge of technology.
Right.
So that doesn't guarantee success. Like I said, it's that 10% Richie Bernard talks about. It's important, but the remaining 90% is even more so.
I think you were a leader in true sense, and I think it's time we wrap up the session. It was truly insightful, and thank you for your valuable time and input, sir.
Thank you very much. I'd lovely talking to both of you. Lovely talking to you, Anurag, and I'm going to take up on your invitation. So as soon as travel sanctions are lifted, I'm going to come to Delhi and demand my pound of food.
Look forward. I'll take you to school. See, Anup, I grew up in a very old, small town called Gurgaon. Old Gurgaon, not the new Gurgaon, in Sector 7. My parents took admission. My father was the vice principal of the government college. I luckily went to a business school based in Gurgaon. So there are some hidden gems in old Gurgaon. If you're a fishitarian, I promise you the best fish you would have eaten. And I live in the best hotels 15 days a month. So I can tell you, in spite of that, for the last 15 years, I've stayed in every fancy hotel in India and across the world. It's the best fish. I even told Chef Sanjeev Kapoor, it's called Pappu Fishwala in Old Gurgaon. It's near my convent school. I went to MDI, so it's a little far. There is a jalebi wala. It's called Sardar Jalebi wala. There used to be a Maman Chaat wala who's no longer there. So there are hidden gems in every city. And of course, Delhi is hidden gems. So we'll discover them together. God bless you. I wish you good luck. I look forward to talking to you. Thank you, Soumya, for joining in this wonderful conversation and contributing to it. Thank you. Good evening. God bless you.
Thank you so much. Lovely chatting with you all. Thank you so much for having me.